The sun was already high when Janina left her house that morning. The heat clung to her skin, thick and persistent, like a reminder of where she lived, a place where everything felt intense. The weather, the noise, the colors, and, unfortunately, the inequalities too. Janina was 28 years old, with deep dark skin, natural hair tied up in a high bun, and a steady, determined gaze. She worked as an administrative assistant at a small company downtown. It wasn't her dream job, but it was honest work, and she carried herself with dignity every single day. Before she left, her mother said what she always said. "Go with God, my daughter. And be careful. Be careful." That word had never been light for Janina. It wasn't just about crossing the street or avoiding danger. It meant something deeper. A kind of caution she had never chosen, but had learned to live with. She grabbed her bag, checked her phone, and stepped outside. Her path to work was always the same. She passed by the bakery on the corner, where the owner rarely greeted her but made sure to smile at white customers. Then she crossed the busy avenue and walked toward the bus stop. That day, though, something felt off. Not in the environment, everything looked the same, but inside her. A quiet discomfort, hard to explain. Like a warning she couldn't quite hear. The bus took longer than usual. When it finally arrived, it was crowded. Janina stepped in and stood, holding tightly to the overhead bar. As the bus moved slowly through traffic, she noticed the looks. It wasn't new. She was used to it. But it never stopped bothering her. A man kept staring, looking away, then looking back again. She took a breath. "Ignore it," she whispered to herself. When she got off the bus, she still had 2 blocks to walk. She moved quickly. She didn't want to be late. That's when she saw the police car, parked on the corner. 2 officers inside. She instinctively slowed down. Not out of guilt, but instinct. The kind of instinct she had never chosen to have. As she tried to cross the street, she heard, "Hey, you there." Her body froze for a second. She turned. No one else was around. "Yeah, you. Come here." One of the officers stepped out of the car. White, tall, with a hardened expression. The other stayed inside, watching. Janina felt her heart race. "Yes," she said, trying to stay calm. "ID. I'm sorry, why?" His expression shifted. Colder now. "Are you questioning authority?" "No, sir. I just want to understand." "ID. No." Her hands trembled slightly as she reached into her bag and handed it over. He examined it as if he were searching for something wrong, anything that could justify what was happening. "What are you doing around here?" "Going to work." "Where?" She answered. He looked her up and down. "Right." That right carried judgment. "Open your bag." "What do you mean?" "You heard me. Open it." People started walking slower nearby. Some looked. Others pretended not to see. Janina felt her face heat up. "I didn't do anything." "Then you have nothing to hide, right?" She hesitated. She didn't want to go through that. Not like this. Not in the middle of the street. Not like a suspect. "Open the bag." Now his tone was threatening. She opened it. He began going through her things. Wallet, makeup, notebook, phone. "Messy," he muttered with disdain. Janina pressed her lips together. "Can I know why you're doing this?" He let out a dry laugh. "Why?" "You really want to know why?" He stepped closer. "You fit the profile." The words hit her like a punch. "What profile?" she asked, her voice firmer now. He didn't answer immediately. Just stared at her. "Don't play dumb." Something shifted inside Janina. The fear was still there, but now it was joined by something else, anger. "I'm going to work. I didn't do anything. And you're treating me like a criminal for no reason." The officer stiffened. "Lower your tone." "I'm not raising it. You're disrespecting me." "No, I'm defending myself." The second officer got out of the car. The tension grew heavier. "What's the problem here?" he asked. "Resistance," the first one replied. "I am not resisting," Janina said, her voice shaking now. People were clearly watching. Some had already taken out their phones. "Stand over there," the second officer ordered, pointing to a wall. "I'm not standing anywhere. I didn't do anything." Silence. The first officer stepped closer. "Last warning." Her heart was pounding so hard it felt like it echoed in the street. She knew one wrong move could make things worse. But she also knew that staying silent would leave a deeper scar. "I am not a criminal," she said, looking straight into his eyes. "And I will not be treated like one." He didn't like that. In a sudden movement, he grabbed her arm. "You're under arrest for disrespect." "What?" She tried to pull away. "Stay still. You can't do this." "Yes, I can." The second officer helped restrain her. People started reacting. "Hey, she didn't do anything." Someone shouted. "That's abuse." Another voice said. Phones were now clearly recording. Janina felt tears building, but she refused to cry. "This is racism," she said, her voice steady despite everything. The officer hesitated for a brief second. "Just a second. Put her in the car." As they took her away, Janina looked around. People watching. Some outraged. Others indifferent. The world kept moving, as if nothing unusual was happening. But for her, everything had changed. This was not normal. And deep down, she knew this moment wouldn't end there. This was only the beginning. The car door slammed shut with a sharp, hollow sound. It echoed inside Janina as more than just metal hitting metal. It felt like the end of any illusion that this would be over quickly. She sat in the back seat, hands restrained, heart racing. Outside, voices still rang out. "This is injustice. They're recording everything. Abuse." But little by little, it all faded into the distance. The car started moving. And inside, the silence was heavy. Janina tried to control her breathing. She had never been through anything like this. Never been put inside a police car. Never been treated like a criminal. And yet, it didn't feel entirely unexpected. It felt like an old fear finally taking shape. "I was just going to work," she whispered. No one answered. The officer in the front drove as if nothing had happened. The other scrolled through his phone. Total indifference. That hurt almost as much as the arrest. The car stopped. Police station. The gate opened slowly. As she was taken out, she felt the stares again. Other officers. Staff. Some curious. Some already judging. "Get out." She obeyed, trying to stand tall, even as her body trembled. "Name?" asked the officer at the front desk without really looking at her. "Janina Souza." "Reason?" The officer who had stopped her answered. "Disrespect and resistance." Janina turned, shocked. "That's not true." "Be quiet," he snapped. She was taken into a small room. A table. 2 chairs. A camera in the corner. "Sit." She sat. Her hands were free now, but the feeling of being trapped was still there. "You're going to give a statement." "I want a lawyer." He laughed. "Already? I have the right." "Everyone has rights," he replied sarcastically. Another officer entered with a document. "Sign here." "What is this?" "Just sign it." "I'm not signing anything without reading it." The atmosphere shifted. "You're making this difficult." "I'm protecting myself." Silence. Heavy. For the first time since everything began, Janina felt fear hit harder. It wasn't just the situation. It was the system. She knew things could spiral. That a false version of the story could be written. That her voice might not matter. But something inside her refused to break. "I want to make a phone call." "To who?" "My mother, or a lawyer." The officer hesitated. "One call." She took the phone with trembling hands. Dialed. It rang. And rang again. "Hello, Mom." Her voice was not the same anymore. "Janina." "What happened?" "I'm at the police station." Silence. "What?" "I'll explain later. Just, please come." While Janina sat inside the station, something was happening outside. The videos began to spread. First in private groups. Then on social media. Woman arrested without cause. Abusive police approach. This is racism. The footage showed everything. The stop. the search, the moment she was grabbed, and the words, "You fit the profile." People started reacting, sharing, commenting, outrage growing. Inside the station, the atmosphere began to shift. An officer rushed in. "Have you seen this?" He showed his phone. "The video." Silence filled the room. The officer who had stopped Janina frowned. "This is out of context." "Out of context?" Another replied. "It's going viral." The word lingered. Viral. Suddenly, the attitude began to change. "Let's handle this calmly," one of them said, now with a different tone. Janina noticed. But she wasn't fooled. She had already felt the weight of the other side. "I want to formally report what happened," she said. "We can talk." "No. I want to report it." Firm. No shaking this time. After some time, the door opened. Janina! It was her mother. Eyes full of worry. And beside her, a woman in a suit. "This is Camila, your lawyer." Janina took a deep breath. For the first time, she didn't feel alone. The lawyer stepped forward. "I've seen the video. We're going to take care of this." The officer tried to interrupt. "That won't be necessary." "Yes, it will," she replied firmly. Silence, and that moment, Janina understood. This wasn't just about her. It was about everything that came before. And everything that could still happen to others. "I'm not letting this go," she said. The lawyer nodded. "And you won't." Outside, the video kept spreading. Inside the station, the atmosphere had changed. And within Janina, the fear was still there. But now there was something stronger. Courage. And a decision made. This would not end in silence. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Janina barely had time to process everything that had happened. In less than 48 hours, the video was everywhere. Social media, group chats, news pages. Her face, her voice, her pain, everything had become public. At first, it was overwhelming. She couldn't sleep properly. Every notification on her phone made her heart race. Messages from strangers came constantly. Some were supportive. "You are strong. We stand with you. This needs to change." Others were not. "You must have done something." Same story as always. Playing the victim. Janina read a few. Then she stopped. She realized she couldn't carry the weight of other people's ignorance. Sitting at the table with her mother and her lawyer, Camila, Janina listened carefully. "This is a serious case," Camila said. "We have footage, witnesses, and inconsistencies in the officer's statements." "What happens now?" Janina asked. "Now we fight." Silence. But not a silence of fear. A silence of decision. "I want to go all the way," Janina said firmly. Her mother held her hand. "And you're not alone." The story grew. Social movements began sharing her case. People organized protests. Signs read, "Not disrespect. Racism. Power is not permission to humiliate." In front of the police station where it all happened, dozens gathered. Some cried. Others shouted. But all were there for one reason. Justice. Internal Affairs opened an investigation. The two officers were suspended. For the first time, Janina saw a real response. But she knew it was only the beginning. During her official statement, she spoke firmly. "I was treated as a suspect without cause. I was humiliated in public. I was arrested for no reason. And I know exactly why." The investigator looked up. "Why?" She didn't hesitate. "Because I am a black woman." The silence that followed wasn't doubt. It was weight. Months passed. The case went to court. The courtroom was full on the day of the hearing. Janina sat beside her lawyer. Across from her, the officers. Now without uniforms. Without authority. Just men being judged. The footage was shown. The stop. The search. The moment she was grabbed. And the words. "You fit the profile." This time, there was no denying it. The defense tried. They spoke of procedure, of safety, of misinterpretation. But the images spoke louder. And so did the truth. When it was Janena's turn to speak, time seemed to slow down. She stood, took a deep breath, and began. That day, I didn't just lose my freedom for a few hours. I was exposed, humiliated, and treated as less than who I am. She looked directly at the officers. And the most painful part is that, in some way, I expected it. Some people lowered their eyes. Because when you grow up being seen as suspicious just for existing, you learn to fear even stepping outside. Her voice did not shake. But I decided I would not stay silent. Because silence protects those who do wrong, not those who suffer. She paused. I'm not here only for myself. Her eyes now shined. I'm here for everyone who went through this and had no voice. And for those who still will, if nothing changes. Absolute silence. Days later, the decision came. The officers were found guilty of abuse of authority. The state was held responsible. Janena would receive compensation. But more than that, her case would lead to changes. Police procedures would be reviewed. Mandatory training. New guidelines. Real impact. When she received the news, Janena stayed silent for a few seconds. Then she cried. Not from pain. From relief. Months later, life began to find a new rhythm. Janena returned to work. But something had changed. She also started participating in community projects, giving talks, speaking in schools, talking about rights, respect, and equality. Her voice, once nearly silenced, now reached many. At one of these talks, a young girl approached her. I saw your story. Janena smiled. And what did you think? The girl answered, eyes shining, that I don't have to be afraid of who I am. Janena felt something tighten in her chest. But this time, it was hope. On that same street where everything had happened, Janena walked again. She stopped for a moment, looked around, took a deep breath. The place was the same. But she wasn't. She kept walking, head held high, with strength, with a story, and with a truth no one could take from her. Her voice had power, and it would never be silenced again.